There we go. And we'll just have an eye out on the lobby just in case people join us a little bit later.
I'll keep adding. I'll keep adding them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Miss Danny, and we also have Miss Smita Shetty. She's the MYP coordinator. And this afternoon, we're going to be presenting to you and actually hopefully getting a little bit of your feedback as well about something called the Collaborative Learning Protocol. And basically, this is a big, fancy phrase for our school's journey of re-accreditation for the IB and NEASC. And we're going to explain what both of those things are. Many of us are familiar with the IB. Fewer of us are familiar with NEASC, but all will be explained this afternoon. And sort of the next year of our lives within the school community and beyond have a lot to do with this collaborative learning protocol.
You're muted again.
Danny, you're muted.
I don't actually know how my computer decided to do that. So am I back?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have a question. Sorry, I have a question. Maybe you already introduced earlier. I just need to know if this conversation is recorded, because I'd like to show to my husband, because he's really interested. He couldn't join. Okay.
Absolutely, yes. This and all parent forums are recorded, and we will absolutely share them with the parent community, especially this one. Not to say that this one is more important, but this one actually requires some very inspired parent and student and teacher action. It's a big whole school growth program. And so we want people who weren't able to join us this afternoon to watch this session. Absolutely. So okay, I wanted to ask all of our listeners and learners a question this afternoon, and you can use the chat to answer my question, or you can unmute and shout it out, and I will add your answer to the boxes that you see on your screen. I would like to know from your perspective, what makes our learning community unique in your experience? What makes it different maybe from other learning communities that you've been in or that your children have been in before? Please tell us.
Yes, Ms. Samantha, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I like the question because I can tell I'm coming from different school systems. Myself as a personal experience, because I'm Italian, and then my kids that they went through Montessori, American, and Scottish system. So I can see a great difference. And this is, my son is extremely involved, is really challenged, especially to go over his comfort zone. And as his experience last 8 years was in a Scottish school where the curriculum was basically all tests, which I'm not against you. I mean, my daughter, she's been through the same system now. She's at university in Aberdeen, which is one of the good universities. So, but right now she's experienced something that she's scared of. Presenting and having a discussion with a peer review, something that I see that in our school is already in place. So great, good to go.
Thank you so much. Having diverse ways of assessing our students.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to add that one to another one because I have two comments in the chat that are very related to each other, which is that we have a diverse community, and you know, we can say lots of diversity in different ways, but Ms. Helen also is pointing out the diversity of nationality, not just in teachers but in students. So our whole community is diverse, not just one piece of it. It's very interesting. Whole community, extremely diverse. I like it. And I'm going to make a nice little list. Others who would like to share in the chat or unmute and say hi and tell us what you think might make this learning community unique. Yes, Kata.
Yes, Ada.
Yeah, hi again. I think one of the things that makes the school unique is also the mother tongue language. This is one of the strengths of the school, where you have more than 9 languages. I think 9 or 10 now, I'm not sure. So this is one of the strengths where you have this opportunity to learn your mother tongue 4 or 5 hours a week, which is unique also.
Thank you so much for that. Is there anyone else who would like to share? And I'll just go ahead and present this and make it nice and large one last time. Make sure I didn't mute myself. I don't think I did. So
You haven't with us, Miss.
So among these things, these are some of the things that make our learning community ours, that make it unique from other learning communities. And this is a big question, especially after COVID, that we find ourselves asking each other. And it was something that we were asked to reflect on as we were in contact with some of the the organizations that we're accredited with. The IB is the one that all of our stakeholders, all of our parents, our teachers, our students are most familiar with. Is, you know, what sort of makes us us? What do we value about an educational experience? What promises have we made as a community on behalf of our children? What are we going to give them? And so this list represents a few of those things, and some of the things that we've been asked to reflect on in the last year or 2 years, coming out of COVID, welcoming new families, saying goodbye to others. So what we've decided to do in order to move forward is we've decided to take this sort of information and feedback from all of our stakeholders and use that as a growth plan in order to not just address the needs of accrediting with international bodies that support educational environments, but also for our own benefit and our own growth, to take what we've learned over the last 2 or 3 years and to transform the learning environment with that. And so we've decided to do that using something called the Collaborative Learning Protocol. And before we explain exactly what that is, I think one of the biggest questions we have to answer is, what is the IB and what is NEASC? Because the IB, as I said before, a lot of us know what that is. We're very familiar with the fact that ISL Qatar is an IB school, but not a lot of us know what NEASC is. And fair enough, prior to, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years ago, NEASC was not a particularly well-known accreditation body in terms of its rigor or in terms of being its own curriculum. The IB has a very strong philosophy, and NEASC actually didn't really have that until they started to develop it. And that's part of the reason why the two things have come together, is because NEASC is a very well-known and very, I'll say, well-vetted accreditation body. It's something that US schools, for example, and now more and more international schools rely upon as sort of a seal of approval of the educational environment, just like what the IB has achieved in the last decade or so. So the IB we're very familiar with as being this sort of inquiry-based, student-focused, student promoting and honoring, learning experience sort of foundation for a school. And NEASC is actually just about the same. So they have recently developed a sort of not quite a curriculum, but a set of standards that asks schools to do the same things that the IB asks schools to do, because research says over the last 10, 20 years that these are the best ways for our students to learn. And this set of skills, I guess you could call them 21st century skills, is what learners need in order to succeed in 2021 and 2031 and 2051, etc. So we, ISL Qatar, are actually accredited through both of these. We are a NIAS school, we have been for many years, and we're an IB school. So all that we're really doing is making sure that we are keeping up with our accreditations, but we really want to do it in a meaningful way so that it's not just a bureaucratic exercise, but something that will help our school become better, that will help our community support our children better. So as I was saying, these two organizations compare very closely. They're very similar. They are both student-centered and student-driven. So the student is at the heart of the learning. They both have shared understanding of what learning is as being very important for a community, which means that parents and children and teachers and leadership have all agreed on what it means to learn. The definition of learning that should be shared in a community. Both organizations say this. One of our parents said that one thing that makes us unique is that we offer challenge to our students, and that's exactly what both NIASC and the IB want us to do. They want us to offer a challenging and inspired learning experience. They want that to be joyful, but also kind of not tense, but they want to push your comfort zone so that you are learning and exploring and then inspired to do something afterwards, act, right? Both organizations want to see diversity in your learning environment, which we know is one of our strengths. They want to see us honoring different cultures that are represented within our learning community, which is something that we take a lot of pride in at ISL Qatar. And then finally, they promote a balance between personal development, academic development, and social development. So while it is important to offer a rigorous and challenging academic curriculum, we don't neglect personal goals. We don't neglect well-being. We don't neglect the characteristics of a good human being. You might have heard about the learner profile traits, for example, the kind of person that we want to become to be successful, not just for us, but for the rest of the world. It's very similar to NIASC's philosophy of education.
So actually,
now I do.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just about to pass it to you. Sorry. And now Ms. Smita is going to tell you a little bit more about exactly what the learning protocol is that we're going through with these two organizations.
So CLP, the new jargon, or the new keyword in the accreditation circuit, is basically two very meaningful organizations realizing that if they work together, there's an ease of understanding, common understanding. Because as international schools around the world, it's really nice to have, all these accreditations just because they all are giving us a common goal, which aligns itself so beautifully to ISL Qatar's mission statement, which is talking about building up global citizens that have the passion for lifelong learning. So collaborative learning is primarily IB and NIASC working together, and both of them are actually focusing on our student learning, right? And at the end of the day, the only one thing that they want us to think about is your children are learners. And what's nice is that the IB still maintains its pathway, which means their standards and practices. They're continuously evaluating that. But what's nice is that the standards and practices of the International Baccalaureate actually manages or merges very beautifully with the 10 learning principles of NIASC, or what previously we used to call it as the ACE pathway. And both of them are focusing on growth. And they're looking at, as what Ms. Danny said, we're looking at 21st century skills. And it's not about 21st century being, the new bit. It's just about change. It's about transformation. It's about some sense of recognition that, oh, there has been a shift. And that's what CL is focusing on. Going on to the next slide, we're actually focusing specifically what is the end result for that? That if we actually pass through this evaluation and we get the, the feedback which says, this is our strength, this is what the parents have been saying, this is what the, the learners have been saying, and this is what the teaching community has been saying, and this is our strengths. But at the same time, when we talk about transformation, there's always an area of improvement. So we are looking at what our areas of improvement are, and we're going to be focusing on that. And in that process, we still continue being an IB whole school curriculum, and we continue being a NIAS school. And one of the most beautiful things about being a human is the ability to reflect. And both of these organizations believe that it's important to reflect, take a pause, reflect, act, and then again, after a little while, continue with the reflection. So I'm going to now hand over to Ms. Danny, because she's going to tell you about this journey that we've had with the CLP till now.
Thank you very much. Again, oh my goodness, working with two devices is not as easy as I thought it would be. But here I am with a wonderful, hopefully readable, the text is a bit smaller than I'd like, timeline that shows you what we've done so far as a school and what we still have to do. We're about a quarter of the way through the process. So in November of 2020, we actually discovered the collaborative learning protocol. This is brand new. It was only invented in 2020 and presented at the IB World Conference in November of that year. I was lucky enough to attend and saw this wonderful presentation and light bulb and took it back to the school to see if it would work for us. And so we did some research, we figured out more about this brand new process. It seemed like it was going to be super cool. So we reached out to the IB and NIASC representatives who invented it. And we invited them for what we call a preliminary visit. And that happened 1 year later in November of 2021, so just recently. And it was the inventors of this protocol who actually came, and they were virtually with our school for a few days, watching our classes, speaking to students. They spoke to parents, they spoke to leaders, they spoke to teachers, getting a sense of our school community and where we were in sort of our journey. And then they made lots of wonderful recommendations for us and accepted us as a candidate school for the CLP. So fast forward a little bit, because we had to get our report back and sort of process the results. And then we started gathering more and more data once we knew that we were accepted as a candidate school from students, parents, and teachers about what they believe is going well and what they believe needs to grow. As a matter of fact, Dr. Sean, our head of school, spoke to parents, also spoke to students, also spoke to teachers about this same sort of what's going well and what needs to develop. And then by about January, Dr. Sean was ready to present to parents, to students, and to teachers what he had discovered. And we, as a staff, started thinking about how we're going to use all that data in order to grow and change, and then how we can, through documentation, through action, through reflection, prove to NIASC and to the IB that we are on a path to change. So we've been meeting with staff. We've been meeting with some parent and student representatives so far. As a matter of fact, our parent representative for our steering group is here this evening. And we have made it to the point of right around that March 2022 mark, which is that we've identified, and that'll come up in the presentation in just a little bit, we've identified our areas of development based on stakeholder opinion from everywhere in the school community. So it's not just this sort of closed bubble of a few people who think they know what the school needs. We've taken hundreds of voices and brought them together and identified 5 big areas of development. And so from now until March of 2023, we will be forming work groups, most of which will have parent representation, student representation, and staff representation. And those work groups are going to use a small working process to create action plans, to put action in place, to watch that action happen, and then to gather evidence to see if it worked or not, like a big science experiment. And then we're going to reflect on that probably around January of 2023. And from all of that wonderful work will come a report that we give to the IB and to NIASC. And then in March of 2023, hopefully in person, we will have visitors from the IB and NEASC to come and see all of the great work that we've done firsthand. So I'm going to pass it right back over to Ms. Smita, who will be talking about our parent participation in this process so far.
So firstly, I want to thank the parents, and I'm sure that there's some here because we have enthusiastic participants here. So I want to thank that approximately 10% of our parent community, all the way from early years till grade 12, have participated in the survey, which actually helps us start with a benchmark from the parent perspective. We have a similar survey happening with students, with staff, with leadership. So we've now got where our benchmark is. And I'm really, really grateful to realize, and it's very nice because, you know, these strengths were like similar across all different stakeholders, that our core values are reflected across our learning and teaching from the primary all the way up to the secondary. That approaches to learning and teaching is like the integral element and, you know, like the thread of understanding and engagement with all our community members. And last but not the least, that we allow our students and our children to have an moment and opportunity to take responsibility for their own learning, which is actually heading into making them the self-directed human being that we want them to be. But at the same time, we do recognize areas of improvement, and thank you for being, you know, as transparent. So that allows us to kind of align our growth and align our action plan for the future for our children. So it's nice that we see that our students are going to become independent, self-directed learners, but we also have to recognize that they are the future citizens. So we need to give them that sense of independence, agency to choose what they're learning and to be able to have a voice on it. So that's definitely one of our areas of focus. And the second one is with regards to, you know, the teaching community and the parent community being able to get a regular, meaningful, timely feedback, which is allowing the students to take the next steps forward in their learning journey. And as Danny has said, and, you know, Ms. Sala is already here. We already have, you know, the parent volunteer being part of our steering community, and we are hoping that we're going to have more parent volunteers to being part of our focus group. So I'm going to hand over back to Ms. Danny, because from this survey, along with the other surveys, we as a school have kind of shortlisted our learning principles, our focus areas, and you will see how the areas of improvement have actually been informing us for our learning principles. Miss, you're muted. Miss Danny?
It's one of those days, and now I'm back. So this is the big five, as it were, and it's been very cool, actually, to watch how these have been selected, because we knew to a certain degree that these were the things we needed to work on before we ever thought about the IB or NEASC. We had this feeling, and it wasn't just through parent surveys, it was through conversations with all of you as we've been able to welcome you a little bit more onto campus, email conversations, conversations between teachers and parents and students. These were all themes that were coming out in our conversations as we were able to open back up slowly. But these have been very specifically selected, mostly from our learning survey results, if you remember those, and then also Dr. Sean's research amongst the community when he got here. So we're going to be focusing first on learning goals, which means creating a very clear and very shared sense of what the learning goals are within our community. So we've got our core values, and those are excellent. But what we did find, and what the CLP visiting team, when they came in November, found, is that there wasn't always a very clear sort of backbone to the learning goals within our community. And so that's one of the first things that we'll be working on. And then once we've got that backbone and it's aligned to everything that we already do, our intention is to use that to plan very strongly. So right where everything is lined up and we've all got that sort of clear sense of purpose. Our second focus area is going to be on assessment for, as, and of learning. And a big part of that, for example, came out of the surveys where both students and parents and even teachers reflected that feedback could be improved, for example, and feedback is one big form of assessment. So we're going to be looking at how we use assessment In other words, typically you want to use that to inform your next step in learning. You want to use it to reflect. You want to use it to grow and to move forward. We're going to be looking at our assessments and seeing how we can make that happen a little bit better. We'll also be looking at learner engagement and autonomy. In the IB, in the enhancements of the primary years program, we call that agency. It's a student's voice, choice, and their ownership of their learning. So how often is curriculum co-constructed with our learners? How often do they write their own or choose their own assessments? How often do they select the case study or the content that they would like to use to explore big conceptual understandings? Those are the sorts of things we'll explore when we explore engagement and autonomy. We'll be looking at learning space and time. This was of particular concern to our students, and understandably so, because COVID has robbed us of a lot of learning space, and we're just now starting to reclaim that space. Well, how do we want to use it? Where do we want to grow with space? The school has great big plans, but will students and parents and teachers have their voice and their choice and their ownership in that? And then finally, we're going to be focusing on the learning community with a big sort of asterisk on well-being. You may have noticed that we're running a well-being month right now, but should it be all year? Should there just be a limited view of well-being, or should it now be this big concern that we have? And where was it before COVID? So we'll be looking at our community as a whole and sort of that balance of academic, personal, and social growth. And now I do believe, Ms. Smita, I'm passing it back to you. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. So
wonderful.
If you've realized there's one common word that's going through these areas of development, which is learning. So I would request all parents and even our colleagues who are in here, if you had to kind of give a word or maybe a phrase or a sentence, so I'm going to kind of count 90 seconds in my head, and I'd love you to kind of just type what you would define learning as a parent perspective. And Ms. Danny would kindly just kind of type it up so that we can have this. So 90 seconds starting now. Yes, Ms. Samantha, you can unmute yourself and share your definition of learning.
No. It's not that I want to be the one speaking. It's just I don't find the chat window so I can write down.
Okay. 1 minute, Ms. Samantha. Let me just see if I can this. Thank you, Ms. Sala. I'll just try to kind of get you the meeting settings. Just a minute. Just check if you've got this available. I've just kind of enabled saying that show chat bubbles, but I'm not sure whether you can get that as an access, because I'm not the one who's organized the meeting, so I don't have that ability to change it. Sorry about that.
Can I just send a message via WhatsApp, because I don't find any bubble for the chatting?
Yes, if there is a way Ms. Danny can access it, definitely. Why not? General knowledge is what I see. New concepts. Thank you, Ms. Samantha. You have another 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm hoping that I can get to hear everyone's voices, even if it's a word. How would you define learning? Thank you, Ms. Kadumi. Reflection, in-depth knowledge, proper collaboration amongst parents, students, and teachers. Okay, Ms. Jeffrey has helped us with another word, igniting curiosity. Ms. Sala has said presentation skills, wonderful. Another 15 seconds, and then I will go back to kind of sharing our definition of learning, which has been co-created from various stakeholders.
Critical thinking.
Thank you, Ms. Samantha. Critical thinking. Ms. Jeffrey says it's a journey. Ms. Sala says it's teamwork. Thank you so much. I know that we have other participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you can just put in a word. Joseph, would you like to kind of share something? Hannah, Mr. Baharia, Ms. Baharia, please. I'd like to, and Ms. Zina, let's have something. Just a word is all I need. Or you could just unmute yourself. I'm more than happy. All right, 10 more seconds.
I might be doubling up a little bit, but don't worry.
No worries on that. No worries on that. Okay, so that I've given the time. Thank you for all who have contributed. We really appreciate that. Ms. Danny is going to actually now share with you what we have currently developed, our living definition of learning, which has been co-created by all stakeholders at school.
Thank you so much. Now, this will be fun because I always forget how to share from the specific slide.
Thank you, Joseph, for saying experience. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, thank you. I will make sure that I add that now. Probably gonna have to tab through. Yep, okay. Me and my PowerPoint skills. So what we did is even without that feedback that we just got, I think it's very interesting to see some of the similarities that we already have between what you see in front of you and the feedback that you just gave us. So what we did is we took lots and lots of keywords from different parts of the community, and a few of us sort of sat together in a very intense few hours, and we tried to bring all of those keywords together and figure out what in these hundreds of voices was most important to learning within the community. And then we drafted and drafted and drafted. And we call this our living definition of learning because it may not stay exactly the same. It may be that throughout our journey, we augment this, we amend it, we change it a little bit, even with just the feedback you've given us just now. We'll keep that into consideration and hand that off to a work group. Nothing is lost, nothing is disregarded, right? But this is what we've come up with so far. And that definition is: learning at ISL Qatar is a joyful, dynamic process of discovery, inspiring innovation and transformation, whereby learners connect and engage purposefully with the world. And another part of our project, which we know is very important to our community, is translating into different languages. We actually have, I want to say, around 10 translations, including a few programming languages, because we don't want to neglect our techies in the community. But we want to make sure that we're publishing this definition in as many languages as we can. And it's also been an interesting experiment to see how these words translate into different cultures, because a language is representative of culture and words don't mean exactly what they mean from one language to another. So one thing that I know I will be inviting parent communities to do, students, etc., is to translate this. And we'll be inviting parents to unpack this definition and to talk about what role they might play in this learning definition. We'll be doing that as teachers in each one of our departments. The students will be doing the exact same thing, because we all have a part to play if this is going to be what we believe great learning is. And so that's part of the journey coming up, is will this definition stay exactly the same? And what will our part be in this definition?
And that leads to the next bit. And the reason why we are having this forum is first for you to understand and introduce this new process of reflection and action that our school's taking on. But we also want you to be an active participant in this journey of reflection and action. So again, I'm requesting the parent community and all members who are in the meeting, how do you think our parents can play an active role in this journey? So giving you 90 seconds again. And if you can just type, Samantha, I think I'm unable to find a way to chat. So if you can just unmute yourself and share, we'd be very, very grateful. And I'm hoping Ms. Sala, Hannah, Ms. Baharia, Ms. Kadumi, Ms. Samantha, and Ms. Zina would all share, and Joseph, and all of you can share how you could be part of this journey with us. Oh, there's a little bit of silence happening here.
I'm not sure if it's connected, but I think that beside following our children in their learning, I see here that there is a lot of human resources as a parents we can put on disposal for the school as well, because we are not just, most of us, we are considered as a trailer spouses,
Yeah,
but
trailing spouses, right? Like
most of
me.
us have degrees, have, skills that we can
Yes.
put together to, help the school, help ourselves, instead of rather than staying home doing nothing. So this is what I think I can do.
Wonderful. Getting in the expertise. We are always seek our parents, even if
Yeah.
they're trailing spouses, that I'm sure that there's some kind of strength that can definitely contribute to our community. And we consider our parent community as a wonderful resource bank. So, the more they kind of come and interact with us, the more we are happy. And I can definitely see much more interaction where, Hannah has kind of said about working in collaboration with teachers, lovely. Being part of projects with teachers and students, yes. Maintaining active teacher, parent, student communication. Yeah, that'll be wonderful. And it actually connects to our the 5 focus areas. Being a good listener, especially parents with academic background. I absolutely agree, as what Samantha said, that your expertise can help, because something I'm going to say this, right? So when someone who's working or who studied this comes in, for them it's like, wow, because they're actually seeing the real life application of the learning. And as parents, when you do come in, there's that connection happening, because they realize that it's not just about teachers and this learners, but it's also the parents involved in this learning journey. So yes, I completely agree on that. So thank you so much. I'm going to kind of hand it back to Miss Danny, because she's actually going to also tell you how we are expecting you to be part of our journey as such. Yes, Ms. Jeffrey, you said we've reached out to the parents to speak with our grade 10 students about, yes, they have, and they've actually accepted to come and share about career explorations. I completely agree on that. So we would also want some more parent volunteers from here. So if Ms. Samantha, there's something that you'd like to share with us, do get in touch with us. I like the look on your face. All right, so looking forward. So Ms. Danny, back to you.
Before I move on to our last sort of meaty slide, I also wanted to just say that one of the most important things that any of our parent community can do is exactly what one of our parents has said, which is just following your child's learning and being there and being active. That won't directly contribute to the CLP work group process, but that's not all that's important here. Being there for your child's three-way conversations, being there for student-led conversations, following your child's work and supporting them is amazing. And it gives them, it gives learners such confidence, and it gives teachers a boost too, to know that, mom and dad, guardian are looking on and are not just saying, great job, but are challenging children here, encouraging independent critical thinking skills, are challenging teachers, asking questions, getting interested, getting curious, because that's really what we're here to do, isn't it? It's to inspire curiosity, as I think it was Miss Helen that said, inspiring, inquiry and inspiring innovation. That's what our definition of learning says. We're here to inspire, and you are a big part of that for your children. So that for me is super important. So thank you for saying that. Now, instead of doing the presentation thing where I have to scroll all the way back through the slides, I'm just going to click on it because I think we'll be able to see it okay. So from the CLP perspective, your role as a parent would be that we want your voice, we want your choice, and we want your ownership. You might remember me saying those 3 words in the beginning. An IB school encourages agency, voice, choice, and ownership. So we would love your agentic efforts for this protocol. And that means your perspective on learning at ISL Qatar and your perspective on the systems and the curriculum that we have put in place. Your choice, your volunteerism, if you've got the time. Once we release the list of work groups that will be formed, which will happen no later than March the 22nd, so it'll be after our holiday break, then if there is a work group or a plan, an action that interests you, that you're passionate about, we'll invite our entire parent community to volunteer. Obviously, not everyone needs to volunteer, but if you see something that inspires you, we want to welcome you into that work group to actually be part of the planning process and to be part of that agent of change within our school. So there's the possibility of volunteering. It'll be about once a month is the commitment, give or take. So it's not a massive commitment, but it's massively important to this process. And then finally, your ownership. You should feel like you're a part of this community. One of those things that does come up about ISL Qatar a lot, and one of the things that I've discovered in my last year and a half is the sense of family. And that ownership is something that we have built in and that we can harness and utilize to make the collaborative learning protocol really, really meaningful for us and to drive change instead of stagnating. So with that said, Ms. Smita is going to present some contact information for you, and then we'll be able to answer any questions that you might still have.
So 3 of our steering committee members are in the meeting. So it's Ms. Danny, who's kind of like the CLP coordinator along with the PYP coordinator. Then there's me, who's going to be, part of the secondary team. So there are some parents that I have interacted. So from grade 6 to grade 12, more than happy to kind of be there. If you have any questions with regards to the CLP journey, happy to answer. And last but not the least, the most important element of our tripod, as I would say, would be our parent representative, Ms. Sala. So Ms. Sala, if you would like to kind of, speak something about, because you've been with us for the steering committee meeting, you might want to share and inspire our parents to join in for this journey.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smita. Thank you, Danny, for the presentation. Actually, my role is here really to encourage parents, as many parents as possible, to come and join this, because we've always had, as parents, since I started at school, always parents and friends of mine used to say, well, I wish they listen to our ideas. They don't listen. I wish we could do change. This should be changed. This should be adjusted. I think this is now the opportunity for that. If really you find that you can add value to the learning of our children, this is the time where you should join. Although I know all of us are busy, as a parent, I know it's too hectic to commit to something. But if we want the best for our children, it's okay to sacrifice a little bit of time, and it's all for the benefit of our children, of everybody's children, for this community, and especially with parents with the background in education, whether you're doing your personal studies in this regard, you can add value. Maybe even your field is not related to education, but you have different perspective of what is needed in the market. Maybe you can come and help and explain to the school that we don't need to focus anymore on these skills are more important now. These are more needed for the students to be successful in their life. So please spread the word among all your friends. Let's work all together, and let's try to to bring the school to a higher level where all the communication is among the teachers, the students, and the parents at the same level.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that motivation. So yes, now the floor is open for all of you to ask us questions. Yes, I agree with that, Ms. Jeffrey. Yes, Ms. Kadumi, do ask us.
Hi. Thank you so much for the meeting. I really appreciate it, and I think it's very important. All the issues that you guys have just mentioned and tackled are important. My worrying question, or my concern, is that you mentioned that we will start seeing the change by 2023. So what's the plan from, how, because there were little gaps here and there among, the points that you mentioned, and it affected children in primary, and it's affecting them now in primary school. So for me, the question is not just me, and for so many parents, I know that you guys have a plan, but how fast and how effective the plan can take place.
That's a fair question.
May I answer that question? So in terms of March 2023, it's in terms of an external evaluation. But the two key words that we've been using so often is reflection and action. So we've started our reflective journey already, and we've already recognized are acting on it. Sometimes, and I'm going to use a biology reference because I'm a biology teacher. So please, if you think the example is bad, just tell me, Ms. Shetty, stay quiet. But it's a little seed, right? If I put this seed into the soil, I'm not going to get a tree within a week. I need few months. I need few months of nurturing. I need few months of providing the nutrients, providing the water, and having the appropriate amount of sunlight. And that does take some time. I'm not saying a whole year, but it does take few months. So we've already started off with the reflection. As I said, from the surveys, we could see that there's a common thread going through. And that was when we realized that, okay, these things we have to act on. And by the time the CLP visiting team comes in to evaluate, this is where we're requesting our parents to come in, because sometimes we may be acting on it, but we need our mirrors, and our parents are our mirrors, right? Because sometimes the mirrors are just saying, look at this is what it is, please can we modify things? And that's what we're requesting your support for. I'm hoping I've responded to your question, Ms. Kadumi, and I think Ms. Sala wants to say something. Great.
Yeah, talking about the change, and this is something I think what's most important about this CLP thing is that usually there might have been some changes at the school, but we as parents were never able to see it. Maybe it was a small, as you said, it took long time to see the effect. Like I can tell you with the math, for example, when my daughter was in grade 1 until she reached the grade 5, I saw there is change, but that change didn't come in 1 year or in 1 month. So it was continuous until it changed. So it will take some time, definitely, but we as parents, if we're involved in this, we will be able to see it more and maybe to enhance and to fasten the process, because with the school and the teachers alone, they might not be able to to apply the change. So maybe we can help as parents, and you, Rasha, you can do a lot, especially with your background, I'm sure.
Lovely.
And if I can just add a little bit to that, part of, actually a really big part of the NEASC side of this process is something called evidence of impact. And we will be very much beholden, I guess might be the best word, but I'm trying to think of a better one. We will be held accountable for not just saying, this is an initiative, we think it will help, look at the wonderful thing we're doing. We will actually be responsible for showing that that thing that we've done has led to the correct or led to a specific change or result. That's the evidence that's actually being looked at when we go through this protocol. And it's really, it's an interesting way to, and not, it's kind of a new way to think of evaluation or accreditation, one that not a lot of us have faced before, in terms of the IB. And that's not to say that the IB doesn't hold you accountable, but the language and the way in which they ask you to document what you're doing is very much this accountability situation. And I think that will make those changes more transparent. So you will see, because we will be collecting direct evidence, not just that we did something, but that thing led to what we wanted it to lead to.
Any other questions? Rasha,
I have one more.
Yes, yes, Rasha.
One more
I was going to say, I
question.
hope we've answered your question, but I'm happy that you're asking another one. Please do.
No, it's. I think I got the answer. My worry is, how are the teachers involved? Because for me, this is my 4th year at the school, and I'm going to be very frank, because for me, I always try to seek, and I'm someone who approaches the school so many times because I'm very involved. And honestly, I'm so happy to see this now. This presentation is taking place, because with a lot of communication that I used to have previously with the school, I cannot say, I'm not going to say never, but I didn't get the comfort or the right feedback from what I needed for my children. So I ended up moving one of my children out of the school. And then the one thing that I'm holding on to is because my daughter in MYP, and now these are points that I was always talking about, is, communication, please feedback. What are the kids learning? How are they progressing? Do they really understand why they are scoring this, specific score? Scores don't matter at this point, but how can we develop to become better? Where are the areas to be held? And still in MYP, from the beginning year to now, we still feel somehow the communication is not there. The other thing is for the teachers, and I'm not going to be, all the teachers are doing a great job, they're trying their best and so on. And I know, coming from an international community here, you always have teachers from different backgrounds, teachers from, they come from different education system. How are they up to date with the IB methodology? Because IB has a beautiful holistic approach. For example, right now, my teacher in grade 6, She's learning math in a methodology, very old methodology that I used to learn. So how is this holistic approach being applied in learning such an important topic as math? And how are the teachers kept up to date to be able to, they're trained and, they're up to date to actually to be able to educate the children with this methodology. What you're saying is beautiful. I love it. This is why I chose IB in the first place. But when it comes to applying it on the ground, where is it, because I attend literally, I'm very involved in every single subject that my daughter takes. You'll see that some teachers are being able to apply the IB approach while others don't come from an IB background. And they're teaching it totally different. They're teaching it the old methodology I used to learn, which I refuse my children to learn this methodology. This is where it's, how are the teachers up to date, and how fast can they actually catch up on the methodology that they should be following?
So Rasha, I see your question at two different this. One is in terms of the involvement of teachers. So as Ms. Danny had said from the very beginning, that we have 5 major focus groups. So obviously each of these focus groups, because it's the ACE learning principle and the IB standards and practices, right? So we're looking at both of them. So when we talk about standards and practices, we're looking at what is in the classroom, what should be happening in the classroom, which is what you're talking about, holistic learning. And when we're looking at the ACE learning or the NIASC learning principles, as what Ms. Danny said, it's about the evidence of impact. So we're not looking at just intention, we're looking at the action. We're not looking at just the reflection, we're looking at what is happening, not in terms of the teachers, but in terms of the students, right? So with that bit, we are engaging our colleagues, and literally, if I might say, Ms. Robertson has been amazing in the last couple of months, where we've got our colleagues to look at the current standards and practices. And if you're talking about how are we keeping ourselves updated, literally, I'm not sure, I think Ms. Holly was in. I have just come in from an IB training workshop where I'm actually getting our colleagues from MYP, which are language teachers, like mother tongue teachers, language, like English as a language teacher. I have language acquisition teachers in that room. I have a math teacher in that room. I have a design teacher in that room. And we're all in there getting on a weekly training of how to improve the practices and how to get into the element of holistic practices. But we're doing it as one small baby step, because when we look at now, I like putting numbers in, right? And I think math seems to be your forte. We have around within just about learning, okay, which is standard number 4, we have 25 practices, and in those 25 practices there are like multiple requirements, which is about 50. So I'm literally going one bit at a time. I'm like a little bit of jigsaw puzzle that I'm building it up, and I'm kind of, one of the things I have actually opened up and I said, guys, enter into my classroom. Whenever you're free, enter my lessons. It might be a diploma lesson, it might be an MYP lesson. See how it would look like in terms of holistic learning. At the same time, I've asked permission, and I had been doing so in the last couple of months, where as and when I can, I just drop in, because we're all teaching full loads, right? So I drop in and I have a conversation, and I'm kind of small steps. I'm not expecting a transformation happening, but small steps are happening where the transformation is happening. I do apologize if there are some times when methodology, and I'm going to use a math example because I am a TOK teacher also. So because of the diversity of our group, there was something that I was doing and a student said, but this is not how it's done. And I froze for a moment and I said, okay, tell me, what are you guys wanting to do? And they kind of did it. And I realized that it was a different perspective. I didn't turn around and say that was wrong. That was how they were learning it. And if that made sense for them, and if it went through and we both got the same answers, I was fine with it. But I never say that, okay, my way is the only way, when I'm doing mathematical problem solving in biology. So it was very interesting because I had a Greek perspective and I had a perspective of a student from, like New Zealand. And I was like, I didn't realize that math was being taught in such different ways. So that's when I've said that all right, different perspectives. Let's see if the main intent is the evidence of impactful learning. So if I see that the learners are kind of moving in, so like recently I was in a math class and I was sitting in and I was just telling Miss Jeffrey that at the start of the class, interaction with the students was very minimal, but literally within a couple of minutes, it started becoming more interactive. And that for me would be like holistic learning, because the children are enjoying the process, and they're not enjoying because I'm in the room, because they genuinely are getting what's happening there. So I'm hoping that has answered the questions at two different levels.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have one last question, I promise.
Yes, please. Please do ask.
The last question is regarding the Arabic language and the mother tongue. Again, our approach, the IB approach, is a holistic approach. We want the children to just to motivate their curiosity. We want them to love learning and so on. And I know the school, I know it's not just ISL, it's the majority of the schools, you know, the only two schools who don't have to just oblige by what the ministry wants is ASC and Doha College, and I understand totally.
Yes.
But how can we balance? How can we balance? Because this is an issue where we're having all parents, not just me, the majority of the parents, where our children are struggling in mother tongue Arabic, struggling. They're hating the language. They stopped using, like they have no curiosity and they don't love to learn. So how can we use the new, you know, all the methodologies that we're looking for? How can we develop the Arabic language? Should we have like maybe a support group or work group just for Arabic? Because Arabic is such an important language. It is the majority of the children, the students in the school are taking Arabic, but the kids are not, they're not developing in Arabic because it's way above their level. So like most of us suffer because it's the Arabic that's given, it's not our international students level, it's way above their level, and they're, you know, they're not enjoying learning anymore and they're not developing well. So where do you put this in the plan for next year?
So if I may say something, just because literally 2 weeks ago, and Ms. Jeffrey, if you want to like drop in, and if Ms. Danny, you have something with the primary perspective, I literally have had this question with the Arabic head of the department, and he said that it's, if you're looking at it in terms of timetabling structuring, that is something that I won't be able to answer. But in terms of the way they're kind of differentiating it, that's what I actually went and I asked, because I said, I've heard that a lot of students, not just Arabic mother tongue, but Arabic acquisition students are finding it a level higher than, right? And especially when it's a formal language, of what I understand, that the dialect is far more easier to kind of communicate and interact with, but the formal language, the expectations are way higher. So what Mr. Maher has said, that there is the intent of kind of, you know, differentiating it and kind of getting them into smaller groups, but that implementation, as I said, it's going to be with, you know, the timetabling team as such. So we are kind of, that has been identified, that has been recognized, and that has been presented. So if Ms. Jeffrey, do you want to add in anything? But this is literally my conversation with Mr. Maher at 11:45 a.m. Tuesday. I've actually had that conversation saying what is happening here, because I've had too many parents having this as a concern. I've gone into classrooms. What's the action plan? And okay, Ms. Danny also wants to give a PYP perspective.
Well, actually, I was just going to say that this being such an incredibly rich and important topic, it might very well need to have its own conversation. Just because there's actually there's a reason why this issue, for example, is not actually included in the CLP. And it's not that it's not a burning issue. And it's something, this is the interesting thing. Another thing that we're trying to deal with is working with initiatives that already existed prior to the CLP, and very important foci that we have, like Arabic, like timetabling, like, you know, collaborative planning for our teachers, all sorts of things that aren't actually included in the CLP, but that we're working on separately. And so I feel like this conversation is probably a big one that we might want to have when more people have been invited to have that Arabic conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because there may be other parents, just like Ms. Rasha, that are very, very interested in this topic, but who might not be here tonight because it wasn't an original part of our agenda.
I think that's a fair point, Danny. And also I would like to have members of the Arabic department here as well.
Exactly, to explain it.
The richness of discussion.
Any other questions?
Last question. Are we going to have any other parent forum before the meeting on the 22nd?
Not for CLP.
Not for the CLP, no. But there will be constant communication in the bulletin So every week a bulletin comes out, and I'm trying to publish an article there once a week. So we'll be calling specifically for volunteers right after the 22nd. And the reason for that is because the steering group is actually going to take those 5 areas, and we've got some data that we're going to look at on the 20th or the 21st. We will identify our work groups from there. And then staff, students, and parents will be invited to join those work groups on or directly after during the week of the 20th of March when we come back from the holiday. So that's when all the work groups will kick off. And then we will, after that, have parent forums as updates, essentially, and also as calls for volunteers if we have specific needs and things like that.
So you have already some parents volunteers. You have some already.
Not quite. I'm hoping that we have wonderful, enthusiastic parents coming out of this meeting who would like to volunteer. But because we don't have the work groups situated yet, it's much better to get those structured first, because we want parents and students and teachers to volunteer for things that interest them, not just to volunteer. So once we know the exact work groups, then we will invite volunteers for sure, because then you'll be able to look at that list and go, oh, assessment, I want to do that. Or learning space, that sounds awesome. I want to contribute there, right?
Okay. Okay, good.
Any more questions? If not, we will be wrapping it up for the day after Ms. Jeffrey has shared something.
Oh, well, I've because I'm so old, everybody, I have been through many self-evaluations, IB and others. And honestly, it is a very rewarding process for any school. It gives, you know what it's like, the busyness of a school year. You blink and all of a sudden it's March. Where did that happen? And I think it's really important that you take the time to stop, to freeze and to reflect. And you want to look at the journey, where the school has come from the last 10 years. Where is it now? And the vast journey that we have made all together. But where do we want to go? Where's the future? Where is it taking us? And we all of us are stakeholders. And we've all got a voice, we've all got a perspective, and we need to hear it. And now is the time. So let's gather everyone's perspective, everyone's voice, everyone's opinions, everyone's idea. Let's take this time to reflect together. We're partners in this, and then we can set out the roadmap for the next few years ahead. And I think that makes it an incredibly exciting and vibrant journey, one where we are all participating in it. So to me, when we're saying yes, it's let's do the CLP, and we know it's a COVID year, and we know it's the year of the World Cup. Yes, now is the time. I think now is the time for us to do this. So I'm delighted that you're all here, and I'm delighted that you're also impassioned about this as much as we are. Let's see where this journey takes us.
Fingers crossed.
We don't need luck if we have wonderful and excellent and enthusiastic people behind all of our planning. And I'm sure that we will. I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop record button.